Assalamualaikum. In this vlog, we explore how syntax and morphosyntax function across different discourse communities. Essentially, we are looking at how language structures change depending on who is communicating, why they are communicating, and who their audience is. The main aim of our analysis is to show that writers do not use grammar randomly. Instead, grammatical structures are deliberately adjusted to suit the writer's purpose and the intended audience. To demonstrate this variation clearly, we analyzed 3 different texts that all focus on the same topic, which is flood response. Although the topic remains the same, each text belongs to a different discourse community and therefore uses language differently. First, we examine an academic abstract taken from a scholarly article. Here, we focus on how formal, concise, and information-dense structures are used to communicate research findings efficiently. This reflects the academic community need for precision, objectivity, and clarity.
Synthetically, academic abstracts often use complex sentence structures to compress large amounts of information into a limited space. We also see frequent use of passive voice, which allows the writer to focus on the research process or findings rather than the researcher.
Next, we analyze digital discourse through a Facebook post by Mercy Malaysia on their Sabah flood response.
In this text, we observe how language is adapted to engage the public, create immediacy, and encourage emotional connection and action. Plus, the synthetic choices here are generally more direct, accessible, and reader-friendly.
Finally, we analyze a news report from the New Straits Times. This allows us to observe how journalistic convention influence syntactic choices, particularly in balancing factual reporting with readability and neutrality. By comparing these 3 texts, we can see how the same issue, flood response, is shaped linguistically to suit different professional and communicative contexts. This comparison highlights the flexibility of syntax and morphosyntax in meeting the expectations of different discourse communities.
This section of the vlog is to highlight the verb tense analysis from the 3 cited sources. First and foremost is agreement. Agreement in grammar is when a verb is compatible with the subject, be it in gender, person, or number. In the analysis, it can be observed that in the academic abstract, singular subjects are far more common than plural subjects with the ratio of 4:1. However, in the news article, the examples given only has singular subjects within it. It is the opposite of social media post, with all of the examples being plural subjects. All of these examples are abiding to the agreement with correct use. Now, moving on to tenses. Tense is used when an action or state occurs to give more context to the situation. In the academic abstract, it can be observed that the presence of present tense is far more common than that of past tense. This aligns with news article and social media posts as well, but the exception with the presence of future tense in the news article and lack of past tense at all. Now, on to voice. Voice in grammar is the relationship between verb and subject. It indicates whether a subject is receiving an action or is performing it. In the academic abstract, the balance between active voice and passive voice is rather one-sided, with passive voice being much fewer than the active voice. In the news article, majority of the voice used in the article is active voice with the lack of passive voice. For the social media post, more noticeable usage of active voice is apparent rather than the passive voice. Moving on to aspects. Aspect is used to show how events or action unfolds over time, whether it was simple, perfect, progressive, or perfect, progressive. For the academic abstract, most of the aspects present in the examples from text are simple aspects. The news article also contains a lot of simple aspects, but with some progressive aspects as well. The social media posts, however, mostly contain perfect aspects, while fewer in simple aspects.
These sections compare morphosyntactic patterns across the three texts to show how grammar change based on their purpose. This comparison is important because academic news and social media texts are written for different audience and goals. By analyzing tenses, aspect, and voice quantitatively, we can clearly see how grammar supports accuracy, immediacy, authority, and accessibility. Now, we are showing the academic writing and news reporting differ significantly in their use of tenses and voice, reflecting their contrasting priorities. Academic texts prioritize accuracy, objectivity, and general validity, while news texts prioritize immediacy and relevance to current events. The academic abstract shows a balanced use of present and past tense, and the past tense shows 60% is used to state general facts and research aims, while past tense use 40% to report complete research actions. This supports accuracy and objectivity by distinguishing established knowledge and specific methodologies. In contrast, the news article relies heavily on the present tense for 80%, particularly the present perfect. So, to report ongoing or recently completed events. This creates a sense of immediacy and keeps the information relevant at the time of reading. The second comparison of voice distributions for academic and news. In this part, the academic abstract uses both active and passive voice to maintain a formal tone while highlighting researchers' processes, and passive construction shift focus away from the researcher, reinforcing the objectivity. Meanwhile, the news article shows a strong preferences for the passive voice for 80%, which allow journalists to focus on victims and outcome rather than agents. And this align with news values, where the impact of event is often more important than who performed the actions. Overall, academic writing values accuracy and neutrality, whereas news reporting prioritizes immediacy and impact. And now we are going through professionals versus the social media for authority and accessibility. So professional text as academic and news, it's differ from social media discourse in their use of aspect and voice, while professional text emphasize authority and credibility. Social media text prioritize accessibility, clarity, and audience engagement. For the first comparison, we are going to aspect distribution between professionals and social media. This academic abstract exclusively uses the simple aspect for 100%, reflecting a preferences for presenting facts directly and efficiently. This reinforces authority and formality. The news article favors the perfect aspect for 60%, which connect past events to their present consequences as an effective strategy for reporting developing situations. And the social media posts display the greatest variety of acts as special form. The use of progressive aspect for 25% and highlight ongoing relief effort, while the perfect aspect 20%, 25% emphasize recently completed actions. These variations improve accessibility and helps reader quickly understand what is happening now. And now we are going through comparisons of voice distributions of professional and social media. For the social media post uses the active voice exclusively 100%, allowing the organizations to clearly identify itself as the agent of actions. This promotes transparency, responsibility, and audience connection. And in contrast, professional texts rely more construction to maintain formality for the academic or to foreground affected individual for news. We can see academic abstracts voices are more active. For news article, they are more passive, and for social media, we can see 100% for active voice distribution. To summary, for key pattern and communicative values, the finding shows that grammar is not used uniformly across texts, but strategically adapted to meet discourse expectations. Academic writing prioritize precision and neutrality. Social media discourse prioritize clarity and engagement, and news reporting balance immediacy with factual credibility. These differences highlight how morphosynthetic choice functions as tool for achieving specific communication goals with different discourse communities.
Next, I will explain my analysis of tense, aspect, and voice choices across different text types, focusing on academic writing, digital discourse, and news report. This aim is to show how grammatical choices reflect audience, purpose, and dominant values. This abstract mainly uses the present simple. For example, flood is the most devastating natural disaster, and about 33% of the population agrees that is the present simple, which signals general truths and established facts, which support the values of accuracy and objectivity rather than immediacy. The passive voice is also used. For example, a comparative study was carried out, further depersonalizing the research process, shifting attention away from researcher to the methodology and findings. This grammatical choice reinforces objectivity by minimizing authorial presence. There is limited use of past simple was carried out, which is appropriate when describing complete methodology, signaling complete actions without extending subjectivity into interpretation. Modal verbs are minimal, and claims are framed cautiously through reporting verbs such as believe and suggested, which aligns with academic hedging that prioritize validity over persuasion. The most important values in the abstract are accuracy and objectivity, which are prioritized over immediacy and accessibility, as the purpose of an abstract is to summarize research neutrally and precisely for an academic audience. The consistent use of the present simple for facts and conclusions, together with passive construction for methods, reflects a focus on validity rather than persuasion or immediacy. Accessibility is secondary, as the target audience is the academic reader who expect formal structure and dense information. The Facebook post employs a range of present-oriented forms, including the present simple as seen in the phrases like "our commitment remain constant" and present progressive as in "continue to respond," is currently on the ground, and the present perfect as in has procured water pumps. The present progressive is particularly salient as it highlights ongoing action, creating a sense of immediacy and relevance. The active voice dominates alongside inclusive pronouns such as we, our, which used to build connection. The sentence structure is relatively concise and clear, supporting accessibility. The tone is supportive rather than technical, and there is no heavy edging, which suits public communication. The primary value prioritized in this step is accessibility, closely followed by immediacy. Accuracy remains important, but it's strategically backgrounded in favor of engagement and clarity. This reflects the communicative goal of public-facing digital discourse, which is to inform quickly, mobilize supports, and maintain audience attention. The news report relies heavily on the past simple, for example, have been affected, were left stranded, which reports completed or confirmed events. The present perfect, for example, have been reported, links recent past events to the present situation, a common feature in news reporting. This combination constructs a clear temporal framework that balances immediacy with factual accuracy. Time markers, for example, on November 24, as at 6 a.m. local time, along with attribution to official sources, for example, the National Disaster Agency said, strengthen accuracy. The tone is neutral with minimal evaluative language, and passive voice appears where the agent is less important. For example, no deaths has been reported. The most important value in this step is immediacy, followed closely by accuracy. News reporting aims to inform the public quickly about the developing situations. The combination of past simple and present perfect establishes a clear timeline, while statistic, official sources, and neutral language maintain credibility. Accessibility is present but secondary, as clarity is achieved through structure rather than simplified language. Evidence from grammar books and academic studies support the view that tense and voice choices in English are shaped by communicative purpose, genre, and audience expectation, with writers selecting specific grammatical forms to foreground facts, processes credibility and relevance in academic and journalistic discourse. According to the study, the simple present tense serves to communicate general facts and universal truths, highlighting its role in conveying objective information in English. In abstracts, the present simple tense is frequently employed in introductory and concluding moves to state the research focus, objectives, and generalizable findings, reflecting its role in conveying enduring facts and the scope of the study. Passive voice is commonly used in scientific research papers to shift emphasis from the researcher to the research process and outcomes. In academic research writing, particularly in methods and results sections, passive construction are frequently employed to shift focus from the researcher to the procedure and outcomes themselves, thereby highlighting what was done. The present progressive tense conveys immediacy or relevance by highlighting actions in progress around the present moment, a semantic function that distinguishes it from simple perfect aspect in English discourse. Safarova discusses the active voice tends to foreground the subject performing an action, making sentences more immediate and accessible by clearly indicating who is doing what. In the study, Hamid explains that the continuative perfect is used to describe a situation that began in the past and continues up to the present. This tense typically appears with an interval of duration to show how long the action or state has been ongoing. Journalists often employ forms such as present simple or present perfect to link recent past events with their present relevance, making stories feel immediate and directly engaging for the audience. Time markers and simple past tense verbs clarify when actions occurred, helping readers understand the sequence of events. Past simple tense pinpoints a completed action at a definite time, while the present perfect looks at the action's presence or effect in the now without specifying when it occurred. Journalists' presents are rather coherent and conceptual, and practical credibility relying almost exclusively on nucleus of sources whom they perceive as credible and highly credible, whose trustworthiness was tested in the past. The relationship between trusted sources and perceived credibility suggests that citizen journalists who are equipped with basic verification techniques are more likely to sustain their credibility in the long run.
To conclude, our analysis shows that morphology and syntax play an important role in shaping discourse, as language choices are made based on purpose, audience, and context. Morphological features such as tense, aspect, and subject-verb agreement help signal time, emphasis, and relationships between ideas, while syntactic structures determine how information is organized and interpreted within a text. Across the three texts, we can see how different discourse types rely on different morphological and syntactic patterns. Academic discourse emphasizes objectivity and clarity through the frequent use of the simple present tense and passive constructions. News discourse highlights recency and impact by using the present perfect tense and passive voice to focus on what happened and its effects rather than on who performed the action. In contrast, social media discourse prioritizes engagement and accessibility by using active voice, simpler sentence structures, and varied tense forms to reflect ongoing and recent actions. Overall, this demonstrates that morphology and syntax function as key resources in discourse constructions rather than isolated linguistic rules. Effective communication depends on how these linguistic features are strategically used to match expectations and values of different audiences. By understanding these patterns, we can produce clearer and more effective discourse in academic, professional, and public contexts.